questions that has come up in some of the calls I've gotten is all guidelines are revised usually about 5 or 6 years after the original guideline. It has taken us longer for ADHD in part because the amount of research that has been done in ADHD is huge, and trying to sort through it and figure out the level of evidence and get agreement has been a challenge. Also, the guideline process, a little different than just a published research article, is that it's written by a committee and there needs to be consensus of the committee. It's then reviewed by multiple sections and committees within the Academy of Pediatrics, as well as a number of external professional organizations as part of it, and so that it's a much more vetted process than just publishing an article as part of it, and it's not written solely by one author, but has had multiple changes through the process as we go on, particularly among the members of the committee that are involved. The original guidelines were really two separate guidelines, one for diagnosis and one for treatment, and that was because there was so much that we had to discuss on both of them. For this guideline, we combined the two of them together to provide a better connection between both the diagnosis and treatment, so they're coming out at the same time. And we moved the instructions on how to best meet the guideline recommendations into an appendix that we call a process of care algorithm as part of it. What you have today is just the guidelines part of it, but what will be available for the clinicians when they get it is both the guidelines and the step-by-step process of care algorithm, as well as a toolkit that has been revised to meet that process of care changes. The biggest change in the guidelines is that previously we really only felt comfortable that we had a high enough level of evidence to make recommendations for children 6 to 12 years of age, because that was where a bulk of the research on ADHD has been done. Since that time, there has been a lot more evidence that's available. There was enough evidence that we could feel comfortable about the criteria being appropriate for preschoolers, and that the process that is needed to make the diagnosis was similar enough to what primary care physicians were doing with the elementary school age children, that it would be appropriate to recommend their being able to diagnose down to 4 years of age. And there was also more evidence about the particularly the use of medication, and certainly there has always been strong evidence in terms of behavioral interventions for preschool age children. We also felt that we could expand the age into adolescence, and it is not that we didn't think preschool children or adolescents in the previous guideline existed. It was that we didn't feel that we had enough evidence to make the recommendations, and there certainly was enough evidence both from diagnostic issues and treatment for adolescents as well. The other change is we this time defined a broader spectrum, so we also discussed within the guidelines what happens if you have children who have some problems with either inattention or hyperactivity or both, but are not quite severe enough that they would warrant a diagnosis of ADHD. And that's more common for primary care physicians to see, certainly, than those clinicians in mental health. And so we give some guidelines on what is appropriate interventions to use with that group at all. The third thing that we do is we really emphasize further, we did it in the first guidelines, the idea that this is a chronic illness, and as a chronic illness, you really have to do all of the things that are important for managing any condition, any chronic condition in children, of educating family, educating the children themselves, following them, dealing with the challenges that occur as the children are developing over time that come up. So they go from preschool to elementary school to junior high to high school to college, and there are challenges that they'll face all the way along the line as a part. The Academy, as you may well be aware, last year came out with guidelines from the Task Force on Mental Health that were much broader than what we were addressing with ADHD, and we wanted to make sure that this guideline fits into that broader picture of the Task Force on Mental Health and mental health issues, so that for particularly the screening process, that's really part of the other task force recommendations, and we refer to that. And then it's when they clearly have problems with inattention and hyperactivity and impulsivity that it then goes into the guideline that we have. And our process algorithm is a step-by-step process to help the physician be able to meet the recommendations we have in the guidelines. And then the toolkit took that process of care algorithm and put the tools with it that make it more feasible for the physicians to do. And for the original guideline, which essentially used a similar process, although not as clearly demarcated as we were able to do here, we really felt we made changes in how primary care clinicians were treating children with ADHD, and we were able to see that both through a national collaborative that the Academy sponsored, as well as when we surveyed pediatricians from before the guidelines came out to about 5 years after